Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Bani Israel, chapter 17, and we will be covering verses 61 to 65. The account of Adam, the story of mankind. So we'll be going over some aspects of the account of Adam, Malaika, Iblees, and Shaitan, which are noted in the Quran, and we will cover some aspects of human psyche as well. These are the references. Over here, I have added this book, The Human Self and Iblees, because the topic which we are covering today, it is covered in detail in this book. And this is our contact in case anyone wishes to raise any query or ask any question on this presentation or any of our previous presentations. Recap verses 55 to 60. We need to know as much as possible about the aspects of Rububiyat in the human world as well as in the universe. This is part of acquiring a self which has become ready for the system of Deen. This self also needs to know the sphere of responsibility of the various messengers of Allah as noted in the Quran. It is also important to know the mechanism of functioning in the human world and the way human beings operate under man-made systems. Because it is from man-made systems we go over to the system of Deen, and this transitionary phase is very slow, very stepwise, and people have to come to grips with the system of Deen. The Quran places no intermediaries between human beings, and this aspect is important to understand through the Quran. If we fail to come to grips with this concept, then essentially we cannot understand the slavery being engaged in under man-made system. Nations destroy themselves by not keeping the law of requital in front of them and thus not holding themselves accountable. So Allah does not destroy any nation. In fact, Allah does not destroy any human being. Human beings, they ruin themselves. And since nations are sum total of human beings, so once human beings in any nation have crossed a certain threshold of doing wrong, then those nations decline and ultimately become ineffective in the world. All this is explained in the Quran. The decline of nations does not come to pass suddenly. It is preceded by clear warnings and signs. Just like any disease, when a disease sets in our body, it starts depicting, it starts showing its signs. Nothing occurs in the universe haphazardly and at random. Everything follows laws. An overview of today's presentation. The appearance of man on the world stage and the purpose of his finite existence on the planet has been the focus of attention since the time man has acquired metacognitive consciousness. If the Quran claims to be the book from Allah, then one expects it to provide a rational answer for the human mind to this query about his purpose of creation. Hopefully, at the end of today's presentation, we will have a fairly good understanding of why man has been created and what is going on in the world of 2024. Here the Quran describes an aspect of human creation in a metaphorical style, stating that Adam, representing the whole of mankind for all times, had the ability to harness the forces of nature, that is Malaika, which were placed at his disposal to assist him through the struggles of life. However, Iblees, which represents his own emotive makeup, did not comply to the laws of Allah as he is provided with his choice to do so. So that is the way we will look at it, that Iblees is not a separate entity from human beings. But the way the story is explained in the Quran, it looks as if it is a separate entity from Adam. Iblis does not agree with those latent potentials which are kept within man and wishes to go against the laws of Allah using his choice and intent, and thus presents his own line of thinking which is noted in these verses. Then another facet of human emotions appears on the scene named Shaitan, who has the potentials and proclivity to misguide others as well as his own self. Various signs of this misguidance are outlined. Shaitan and Iblis are two sides of the same coin and represent negative aspects of unbridled human emotions and desires. Finally, it is made clear that man does not have to obey Iblis and Shaitan, and he can select whether to follow the guidance of the Quran with a view to live a better life. If he chooses to follow the path of the Quran, then he will reap its benefits in this life as well as in the life of the hereafter. Now, what I have done is, in the process of putting these slides together, I went through some relevant portions on Adam, Iblees, and Shaitan in the book The Human Self and Iblees by Allama Pervez. And I thought to share some of these excerpts with each other because there is a lot in it which is very motivating and very revealing as well. Now, over here, the scene is being set for the arrival of Adam in the world. And this is a beautiful explanation, and I will read it. The desire of beauty to express took a yawning stretch, and in the natural forces of the environment of the vastness of the universe, a slight movement emerged. I think it's a beautiful sentence, and we should go through it a few times to come to grips with the essence of it. An imperceptible sign was observed in the delicate veils of the divine plan. In the silent strings of the infinite heavens, a slight quiver of light was perceived. The innocent-like gazes of the angels rose upwards, and the noiseless strains of Sabuhun, Kudusun in the form of colored vibration rhymed slowly and softly. Those of us who can read Urdu, they should go through the Urdu side of it in his book, Iblees o Adam. Afar from the supreme throne, the creative pronouncement of Kun broke this magical, awesome silence. The veils of nothingness started to lift, and from the other side of the horizon, from the domain of Amr, the adorned universe began to rise silently. This is in reference to when Allah says that be and it starts happening. That is Kun Fayakun. For example, in chapter 36, we can look through that verse. The scientist has defined this with motion and heat. So anyone who doesn't have Iman, but he's a scientist and looks at the world as a physical entity, then this is his opinion. The philosopher declared it to be the domain of confinement of ideas. The Sufi dubbed it as the sparkling display of unity love. Men of understanding and reflection declared it to be the starting point to a well-planned program. And the Quran called divine Amr the entrancing display of Iman. So human beings with different outlooks put a different understanding or meaning on the universe as they gained consciousness. Though the outline of the universe appeared as it should have, it was very dull and colorless. It had to be dull and colorless because there was no human being around it. Gradually, linkage and coordination began to take place in its scattered elements, and as a consequence of this linkage and coordination in this outline, some signs of colors began to appear. These scattered colors started to slowly focus on one point. Coalescing together, these dispersed sparks became electrifying flashes. Those holders of secrets in the sacred abodes heard something in their ears only. The earth shivered, the heavens quaked, the shining goblet of the moon spilled over, the tiny hearts of the stars were overawed. The angels, that is Malaika, bowed their heads, the earth and heavens offered their obeisance, Iblees gave the challenge of confrontation. And in this way, this dull universe became an amphitheater of color and fragrance and became an arena of sorrow and joy. And some more excerpts from the Human Self and Iblees. It was now that the first stage of this program commenced in actuality, prior to which evolutionary stages spread over a period of eons were traversed from the material universe to the human form. Now that stage had arrived at which man became capable of being addressed, where having bestowed hearing, seeing, consciousness, intellect, intention, and the freedom to choose on him, he was addressed as Kum, that is you, as opposed to Hoa, that is that. So man appeared, and he appeared as a responsible being with choice and intent. The creation of man has taken place after a very lengthy process of evolution, and following this process, some single individual was not created, rather a species was created, which is called mankind. This is a very important point in terms of forming a concept, that it did not start from one couple. It started from species dispersed throughout the globe. Hence, by Adam, it is not meant as the first man who was somehow or other created, and then from this the human race proceeded forward. Rather, Adam means the human being. Now we come to the first verse of today's presentation, 1761, arrival of Adam on earth, role of Malaika, and appearance of Iblees. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ قَالَ أَسْجُدُوا لِمَنْ خَلَقْتَ طِينًا. This rebelliousness and arrogance of theirs was the outcome of those same vested interests which have been accompanying man right from the beginning and which become impediments to his coming on to the right path. They have already been described in detail metaphorically in the account of Adam in Surah Al-Baqarah, but it is being reiterated as a reminder, and start is made from that point when we said to the Malaika, that is universal forces, that bow down before Adam. Because Adam needed some forces, some power to carry out his creative activity on the planet. And these bowed down before him, and they should have, because Malaika do not have choice and intent, so they agreed, in a way we can say inverted commas, they agreed to obey Adam. But Iblis did not do this. But Iblis was different. So some people say that Iblis is part of Malaika. That is not right, because over here, Iblis is a separate entity. He said, should I obey such a man who has been created by you from clay, i.e., in whom the element of proclivity towards material allurements is so overwhelming? Now, over here, what I've done is I put down some more excerpts from the human self and Iblis. Let us go through it. The tale of Adam is the story of man himself, not the life story of a particular individual. The concept of old father Adam and mother Eve is a biblical concept, not a Quranic one. The Quran has narrated the story of man in a metaphorical style so that abstract realities can come before us in the attire of allegories. Turn over the first page of the Quran after briefly describing the aim and requirement for this greatly esteemed book and the three categories of human beings, that is muttaqeen, kuffar, and munafiqeen. And they are explained right at the beginning of the Quran. And then the story of Adam comes at verse 30. The beginning of the story of Adam occurs in these words. Behold, your Rabb said to the angels, that is Malaika, I will create a Khalifa on earth. The explanation of the word Khalifa, which means actually successor, and some people say it is Khalifa for Allah. That is not correct, because Allah doesn't have any successor. It is enough to understand this much, that by this is not meant the Khalifa of Allah. By this is meant the successor of previous inhabitants or species. No one has been called Allah's Khalifa in the Quran. So this point should be very clear, because our concepts should be precisely those which are given in the Quran, not man-made concepts. The species prior to humans did not have the power of choice and intent. In the chain of evolution, this was the first link which was given choice and intent. The remainder of the universe, which does not have free will and intent, is busy in the task of carrying out its assigned duties without complaint or resistance, according to the laws of Allah. Continuing, but man has been given free will so that if he wishes, he can obey the laws of Allah, and if he wishes, he can rebel against these. Because through choice and intent, man has to become creative in this world, both in the physical world and also in the world of values. And presently, we are going through that stage where man is only creating, is changing and creating within the sphere of physical world. What can be the consequence of transgression against the law of Allah other than fasad, that is disorder? Hence the forces of the universe, Malaika, said that, will you place therein one who will make mischief therein, that is, will do fasad and shed blood? Contrary to this, our state is such that while we always remain engaged in carrying out your program, seeing the results of which every visionary will become entranced in admiration, and no matter how far we need to go, we go and are never fatigued. So that is put forward as a question from the side of Malaika, the forces, the universal forces, that this man who is being created with choice and intent, without the guidance of Allah, this is what he is going to do. And the answer comes back A beautiful smile became a lightning wave and spread on the glittering face of the creations of nature, and it was declared, I know what you know not. The need for a creation with choice and intent. And I put a question mark over here because this is for us to profoundly reflect through it on a continuous basis till the time we find the right answer, right concept from the Quran. The forces of the universe can cause this machinery to function according to the command of Allah, but cannot add anything to its beauty themselves. And this is very obvious. Animals cannot add beauty to the world in which we live. It is only human hands which can create beauty to that, and also can create ugliness as well. They can create evil and make the world hell for themselves and for other creations as well. They can obey Allah's command but cannot become His companion. This status is specified for man only. Hence, for the realization of this reality, the following was executed. And He bestowed knowledge of things to Adam. Now, this is the next part of the verse, that is verses 31 to 33. Then He placed these things before the Malaika and said, if you are truthful in your claim to succession, then tell me the property and nature of these things. They bowed their heads and stated, O Allah, of knowledge we have none, save what you have taught us. In truth, it is you who are perfect in knowledge and wisdom. He said, O Adam, tell them their names. When he had informed them, then Allah told the Malaika, did I not tell you that I am aware of all the hidden matters of the heavens and the earth, and also know your hidden and manifest abilities? Now, this aspect is very important, and we can look at the verse that these hidden and manifest abilities, which are kept within various things of the universe as well as human beings, can be accessed, can be discovered through our efforts and through all the potentials which are provided to us. Now, continuing further, Adam was given knowledge of asma, that is names, that is human beings are given this ability to characterize things and to give them names. In this, an indication has been made towards one very great reality. The first level of knowledge is perceptual, i.e., that knowledge which is achieved through the senses. The Quran has placed great emphasis on this knowledge as well. It repeatedly emphasizes the importance of making use of hearing and vision. But after this is that level of knowledge which is called conceptual, i.e., establishing concepts through perception. This part can be achieved purely at the human level of life. As far as concepts and asma are concerned, it should be understood that no concept can come to mind until some word, that is ism, exists for it. And very important because we practice it every day in our interactions, in our conversations, and in our teaching and educating ourselves and others. And no word can come into existence without a concept. The Quran has stated this, that Adam was provided with the ability for conceptual knowledge. This was that trait before which the heads of the Malaika, the various forces of the universe, became bowed. And behold, we said to the Malaika, bow down to Adam, and they all bowed down. Not so Iblees, he rebelled and was haughty. He was of those who reject Iman, that is, he was of those who do kufr. The Malaika bowed their heads in acceptance. It is in the nature of these forces of Malaika to bow down. Their characteristic is obedience, subservience, and compliance. In contrast to this, rebellion or haughtiness is contained in the nature of the fieriness of Iblisi force, and which is actually the manifestation of the abilities of human beings. Bowing down before the laws of Allah is Islam, and transgression and contravention of these laws is kufr. Now, we look at the verse 1761. Now let us reflect on the verse a bit more. Though the account of Adam noted in the Quran appears to be metaphorical, if we analyze its finer details, keeping in view the evidences available in the world of 2024 about human behavior and conduct, it becomes a glaring reality before our eyes. We witness the use of choice and intent in every strata of mankind across the globe. The world around us is created by human choices. Can we have a better word than this? So Quran helps us to define the world around us and tells us that you don't have to live in this world which is made by by men. You can have a better world, and this is the map of the world which we present. That is, the Quran presents before us, and then it leaves it to us to make a choice, and then it also tells us that what path is to be followed, and then provides guidance on that path on a continuous basis. And that is part of our effort on this platform. Despite death staring every human being in the eyes, those in power forget their own death and are willing to establish and support a murderous system in which they accelerate the death of fellow mortals without any hesitation. And we can see the evidence of it everywhere on the globe. The answer to understanding this criminal human psyche lies in understanding the purpose of human creation at a fundamental level, and analysis of the story of Adam does precisely that. Man, by possessing choice and intent, has managed to create all kinds of technology and conveniences in the world, but without employing the light of Wahi. So what is going on in the man-made world is without the light of Wahi. And that is something we should keep in mind, because we are exposed to the light of Wahi, and as a result of that, we can see all those darknesses which exist in the man-made systems. Once he chooses to pay attention to this aspect of his life based on the self, his creative abilities will acquire a higher dimension and the human world will transform. And I have quoted part of the verse over here, وَأَشْرَقَاتِ الْأَرْضُ بِنُورِ رَبِّهَا. And see the word Rabb here, which is related to Rububiyat of Allah. The earth will be enlightened with the system of Rububiyat, and that will be through human hands. Another important point to note is that Iblees appears to be some separate entity dissociated from Adam. It is not like that. It is the unguided state of the human self, and this fact becomes clear when we cross-reference various verses where the conduct of Iblees points to human behavior in the world around us. In fact, the root of Iblees is BLS, and which means someone who is in despair, who becomes hopeless. And hopeless means he becomes hopeless from the rahmat of Allah, from the guidance of Allah, and doesn't think that the Quran can guide him or her, or can provide the map or guide them towards the system of deen. They think that the life will end with death, and they become hopeless of the life of the hereafter. So that is the way we should view it. We can look at its root in Lugatul Quran. Now, further on this verse 1761, looking at some weaknesses in man who possesses I with an unbridled intellect, emotions, and desires. For example, the Quran states about man, for man was created weak, becomes an open that is clear disputer, and we can see examples of that in the word. Man is a creature of haste, for man is given to hasty deeds. For man is ever miserly, and of course, man is greedy and hoards and does not wish to spend on others or make it available to others. Truly, man was created very impatient. And we should keep in mind that this is what Allah is saying, who created us. So these are our default positions, but we have to use our choice and intent to come out of these. And obviously, we cannot come out of these unless we recognize these in the first place. But man is in most things contentious. Plenty of it we can see around. Just look at the media and what kind of discussion and arguments take place on all media channels 24/7. He was indeed unjust and foolish, that is zalim. But man does transgress all bounds. We can see that. Truly, man is to his Rabb ungrateful. Ungrateful means over here that the latent potentials which are kept within us, we fail to bring them out. That all those abilities which are given to us, we do not turn them into capabilities. We do not display all those divine attributes within our character, and see how much damage we do and go through this life in misery, under fear, and then nothing in the hereafter. And man displays kufr, and opposite of that is mu'min, and we have to use our choice to become mu'min. What it means to have choice and intent. This man with all these limitations is provided with choice and intent and handed over the control aspect of the planet, and has the ability to control the psyche of other human beings. We should keep in mind that we simply cannot understand the purpose of our creation unless we come to grips with these finer aspects of our own psyche and look at the world around us and the psyche of all those human beings who either refuse to follow the message of Wahi if they know about it or are not aware of it. It makes no difference. And the situation is like that, that if there is no school in a village or in a town, then the children of that town or village will not be educated. If we reflect a bit deeper on the state of affairs, this is a truly scary scenario in which human beings are given so much power on the physical side of the planet and can also wield so much power over their fellow human beings. Here, Allah, who has created all this for a purpose, has made it clear that if we understand the laws governing the universe and the human world, then we can seek His help, that is the Quran. So it is our choice. Help is available through the Quran, but it is our choice whether we want that help or not. In order to fulfill the purpose of the creation, the purpose is to acquire that self which can create the system of Rububiyat for whole of mankind. And then that self will become qualified for the life of the hereafter and will join that system of deen which exists in the hereafter, while providing full choice to man to be able to carry out batil deeds in the world by acquiring power through the physical laws. There is also choice provided to man to work for haqq, and power will be bestowed from the direction of Allah as per His laws. And we have to give it a go. Human beings are not, because they do not understand the Quran, even those who go through it, as a result, they do not understand this recipe or formula to acquire power through His laws. Understanding both kinds of laws is the fundamental responsibility of the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. We will explore some aspects of this in relation to Iblees and Shaitan further in today's talk. Now let us go to the next verse, 1762. Iblees makes the wrong choice. Qala ra'aytaka hadhallazi karamta alayya la in akhartani ila yawmil qiyamati la ahsane kanna zurriyatahu illa qalila. At this, when Iblis was told that he will remain deprived of the blessings of life, he replied that because he disobeyed Allah's command and did not wish to follow His laws. If this is indeed your decision that this inferior creation should be given preference over me, then give me respite to the time of the day of judgment, the time of manifestation of human deeds. Then see what I do with his race, barring a few. How by tying a rein in their mouths, I drag them around however I wish to take them. So those human beings who decide to become like Iblis, then this is what they are going to do. Expanding this verse a bit further, carrying on from the previous verse here, the Quran has quoted from the tongue of Iblis that this battle of mine will not end here. It will continue till the end of the finite life of man on the planet, i.e. his physical death. Note here that Iblis is shown to possess choice and intent. Malaika do not possess any choice in their performance of tasks assigned by Allah. So we should differentiate between the two when we go through verses like this through the Quran. Iblis first puts forward his line of argument when he says, Allazi karamta alayya, i.e. whom, that is Adam, you have honored above me. This aspect needs a further reflection as it points to the existence of human egoism, where man, forgetting the needs of his self, focuses more on his physical life and thus creates imbalance in his life. See over here, Iblis is concentrating more on the physical side rather than on his self, and that is why he's making the wrong choice. He thinks that it is his body which is defining him, and not realizing that he has a self. So he has to operate at the level of his self to understand and bring a balance towards his physical existence. The next part of the verse notes, Lain akhartani ila yawmil qiyamati. Iblis was asked for respite to carry out the fulfillment of his desires until the time that human deeds become ready for their manifestation. This is normally translated as the day of judgment. In relation to this life, it points to the outcomes of human deeds and to be in a position to witness their consequences. So what Quran is saying is that human beings are given enough time as physical beings till the time of their death, and till the time the results of their deeds manifest in this life. They will have total, complete choice and intent of course, within the constraints of the system in which they are living. This could be before human physical death or the death itself. So our results, the results of our deeds, if they are so bad, can manifest even before our death, i.e., Iblis stays with man throughout his physical existence. And that is the bottom line, that Iblis is our own inner state, the way we behave, the way we think, and it stays with us till the time we leave this life through death. Further reflections on this verse. Another important point to which the Quran is asking us to pay attention is that our creation as human beings, possessing choice and intent, and our constitution, possessing intellect, emotions, and desires, is a carefully planned event and is signposted by the Quran for our guidance. If we choose to follow the path of Iblis, then essentially we are opting to live a life which we may consider to be a very successful one based on our achievements within the man-made system, but devoid of any self-development. In the words of the Quran, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ وَلِقَائِهِ فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. We should look at these verses in chapter 18. I think this is verse 105. And we will see that how the Quran is explaining that what happens to people who do not take life seriously. Those who do kufr to the signs of Rububiyat and do not hold themselves accountable for their deeds, their efforts in this life will go waste, and the balance of their deeds will not even be raised on the day of judgment, as there will be nothing to weigh. So if we do not possess a developed self, following the values given in the Quran and using its criteria and checked it, then essentially we have nothing in the hereafter, because with death, with physical death, that will be the end of our life. We will have no self which can go on to the next evolutionary stages of life. And that self we can check right here in this life. It is not otherworldly, and we have gone through these aspects previously as well. Then Iblis points to another important aspect, that once his leash is in place, then human progeny will also follow the footsteps of their forefathers, a path of convenience. So these human beings who act like Iblis, they want others to be Iblis, as well as they want their children to become Iblis as well. Because human beings like company, people, when they want to conform with others. The question here is, who will stop this chain of madness and insanity in the human world? Does the Quran provide the recipe for this? Now let us go to the next verse, 1763. Iblis is informed about the consequence of his wrong choice. Qala azhab faman tabi'aka minhum fa inna jahannama jazaukum jazaun mawfura. Pretty powerful statement from the direction of Allah. At this, Allah replied, "Go, whoever among them follows behind you, the fields of life of all of them will be burned to ashes." And this is based on evidence. We can see plenty of evidence of what human beings are doing to the world, which is given to them free from Allah. And this is the full and precise recompense for your deeds. Further reflections on this verse. The answer to his desire arrives from Allah. Azhab faman tabeka minhum. Go your way, play with your unguided choices. If any of them follow you, i.e., your path of choice, then what will Allah do? That is, what will his laws do to you? The outcome of their choice to follow the path of Iblis will be the Jahannam, which will be created in the human world. And Jahannam includes both the physical aspects of it, which is full of fear and anxiety and grief in the world. And it also means the stoppage of any development of the human self, which appears in the form of depression and psychological diseases. And this will be the recompense for doing evil deeds, the consequence of following unbridled desires. If you create Jahannam here in this life, then Jahannam will be awaiting there, that is in the hereafter too, for you. Because the next life is really a reflection of what we do over here. So it is a continuation of our life at self's level. So if we do not possess a developed self here and we lived in a man-made Jahannam and never made any effort to change it, then essentially we are going from one Jahannam to another Jahannam. Not a very healthy way to think, or very healthy forecast. The Quran made it clear in verse 45:22, وَخَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ وَلِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. The universe is created as haqq and in order to recompense every nafs, that is self, for what it does, and no one is to be treated unjustly. By concluding the verse with Jazaan Mahfura, an ample recompense for all your deeds. So there is no way to escape it because we cannot escape it. How can I escape from the consequences of my own thoughts and deeds? Because this is inbuilt within each one of us. It's a beautiful system. The more we concentrate on this, the way law of requital functions in the world individually as well as collectively, one is fascinating that how sustainable and effective Allah has created this universe and, of course, human beings. It is made clear that if you bother to look at the system of accountability, you will see that nothing can escape its grips. Next verse 1764, Shaitan appears as another facet of Iblees. When I was going through these verses, I thought that you can't get bored. There is so much excitement in these 5 verses which we are sharing today, and now that excitement will take a new dimension. وَاسْتَفْزِزْ مَنِ اسْتَطَعْتَ مِنْهُمْ بِصَوْتِكَ وَأَجْلِبْ عَلَيْهِمْ بِخِيلِكَ وَرَجْلِكَ وَشَارِكْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ وَإِدْهُمْ وَمَا يَعِدُهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. We can see everything happening in 2024. We are aware of what kind of tactics you, that is Iblees, will employ to misguide them from the right path. Now this is what Allah is saying. Some of them you will remove from their position by misleading them via propaganda alone. And this is what Iblees will do. Those who will not be frightened in this way, you will assault with your great armies. Such armies in which cavalry and infantry will all be included. At some places, you will start to provide them with financial aid and will include them in your commerce. And in this way, through economic control, will make them your companions in your ideology. At some places, you will open such academic institutions through which their future generations will automatically adopt your colors. And some, you don't have to even academic institutions. The human beings, that is Iblis and Shaitan, will do it themselves by not providing them any education. You will make great and lofty promises to them, though your promises will all be based on deception, and they will swallow all your treachery, and they will willingly accept it. And that is the beauty of the way Shaitan works in the world. Expanding various aspects noted in this verse. What is noted in this verse needs careful analysis as it points to those Iblisi facets of human personality, the evidence for each one of which we can see on display in the world of 2024. This is all in the constitution of each one of us and is waiting to be displayed in case we do not come to the guidance of the Quran. We shouldn't feel somehow satisfied that others are doing it. We have to look at it that before coming to the guidance of the Quran, what we were like, what kind of a psyche we had. And another aspect is that all of our children will have this psyche in case they do not come to the Quran. Firstly, to become aware of it, and then to identify these within each one of us and deal with these through the process of self-development as put forward by the Quran. Let us dissect the verse by parts. First, it states, وَاسْتَفْزِزْ مَنِ اسْتَطَعْتَ مِنْهُمْ. Lead to destruction those among them whom you, that is Iblis, can. We should keep in mind that this is being noted by Allah, who has created human beings, and we see the evidence for this in the world around us. In light of this statement, is there any allowance left for any student of the Quran to be optimistic about positive outcomes from the non-deen system? Because with these kind of statements are based on fact and evidence, students of the Quran should never ever reconcile to the man-made system and look for means to change it. This word is handed over to man completely for a finite period of his existence, i.e., until he or she dies. He is free to practice his choices here and then live by the consequences of those choices. If he has an Iblisi mentality, i.e., the default state of the human intellect, then he will try to create a world whose example we see around us in 2024. Expanding this verse further, this is how we are meant to view the world and not bring our emotive biases into it. We can look at the words which are crystal clear and are supported by physical evidence in the world. And this is why this is a book from Allah who created us and who gave us this psyche, which has tremendous latent potentials. And what we are seeing in the physical world is not even a fraction of what is within us, which we can bring out through the guidance of the Quran. Who will stop Iblees from doing this? Who is given complete freedom by the laws of Allah? It is a challenging task and demands an uphill effort by the students of the Quran. Let us proceed forward. Then the next part of the verse is Bisauteka wa ajlib alayhim bikhaileka wa rajuleka. Feel free to destroy them using your voice, media of every kind, make assaults on them from all directions. With your cavalry and infantry, for example, wars and conflicts, including civil wars. So in the first stage, Iblis will try to convince others through its media or through its propaganda and accuse them. And if others become scared, they will follow Iblis' path. But if they do not, then Iblis will come with all weapons of mass destruction and destroy them. And we can see the example of this war after war, what human beings are doing in the world. And when people do not agree with them, they are abducted, they are killed, they are kidnapped, the pressures are put over them, made their videos, and they are exploited and blackmailed. And all of them, in the word of religion, they all follow these rituals very religiously. And they all take the name of God, Allah, whatever deity they have. All these methods are being employed in today's world to spread mischief, to control mankind in every part of the world, and there is hardly anyone raising their voice to warn mankind that the path adopted is on this assumption that human life ends with death. And this is all because of this, that the human beings do not want to come to the choice of getting life beyond death, not coming to the Quran, and not questioning what is going on in the world around them, or looking for an alternative to it. The whole choice of the life in the hereafter is totally omitted, and those who have access to the Quran, their minds do not go in this direction, that we do not have to live life as if it will end with death, because it is not going to end with death. And that is something with which we have to come to terms with. We have seen the choice of Iblis and Shaitan noted here. And with this kind of allowance, with that kind of a permission given to Iblis and Shaitan, we still try to pray to Allah and supplicate to Allah that somehow our condition should change. Whereas Allah Himself has made it very clear through these verses that what is the state of Adam as a creation in this life. Continuing on this verse, the Quran declares this Iblisi path in which the choice of the hereafter is absent to be a path of despair and hopelessness, because man lives life continuously under the fear of physical death and lives in the desperation of accumulating benefits for his base desires. This serves as an impediment on the intellect, which cannot think of any higher purpose of life. All those latent potentials which can materialize for the benefit of individuals and society cannot be accessed when we are under the spell of an Iblisi mind, though we still possess choice and intent. If we are thinking like Iblis, Quran will never make sense to us, even if we are going through it repeatedly and we are going through it every month. It makes no difference. So we have to get rid of this mentality first. And in order to get rid of that mentality first, verses like this are extremely helpful. But these need a lot of inner reflection in our own time. Next is mentioned in the verse, وَشَارِكْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ, i.e. mutually share with them wealth and progeny. We can see that happening, for example, in America, Wall Street, all the corporations and those who are donating to the presidential campaigns, and all the pharmaceutical industry, all the military industrial complex, all of them are doing this, what is noted in this verse. The evidence of this practice, both individual and collective, is overwhelming, and we see the criterion to judge success in the world is focused on these two aspects. Development of the human self is nowhere near it. After this is noted, wa'idhum, make promises to them. This includes our own setting of goals in life, which are not guided by the permanent values, includes our dealing with others. We witness all this in the man-made world on a daily basis. For example, political parties making all kinds of promises to attract votes. And it's a beauty that human beings are divisive. They create divisions first. And Quran said, don't create divisions because you are one big brotherhood of humanity. And then they make promises as well and repeatedly go against their promises. Still people vote for them. Still people want to bring them up because that is the way they have turned their psyche into an Iblesi one and a satanic one. Promises, agreements, contracts, covenants are made and shattered to pieces, and when it suits the stronger party. Some excerpts from the human self and Iblees. Then the verse factually sums it up by stating, وَمَا يَعِدُهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا غَرُورًا. But Shaitan promises them nothing but deceit. Note here the word Shaitan has appeared and not Iblees. Shaitan and Iblees are the two sides of the same coin. The Malaika prostrated before man. Iblees stood up in confrontation. Obedience, submission to commands, and compliance are traits of the Malaika. Rebellion, transgression, sinfulness, and rejection. This is the essence of Iblees. There are also such things in which the same action is sometimes attributed to Iblees and sometimes to Shaitan. For example, in one place it is stated about Iblees that he is your avowed enemy, whereas at another place exactly the same is stated about Shaitan. The biggest episode of all is that of having Adam expelled from paradise. In Surah Taha it is stated that the cause of this is Iblees. But in Surah Al-Baqarah, this has been attributed to Shaitan. So both are used interchangeably, but of course we have to look at it that Iblis is more related to hopelessness and Shaitan is more related to human fiery side and human impulsiveness. The truth is that when human emotions incite him towards lawlessness, then rebellion manifests in him. This is being satanic, in which the aspect of impulsiveness is prominent. But when the consequences of this lawlessness appear before him, despondency and hopelessness descend on man. As a result, this is called Iblisiyat. So over here, what is connected is that due to our impulsiveness and making bad decisions, which lead to negative outcomes, then we fall into despair and hopelessness, which is being Iblis. 1765, those who choose to remain protected from Iblis and Shaitan. Now over here in this last verse, the Quran has said, Inna ibadi laisa laka alayhim sultanun wa kafa bi rabbika wakila. These tricks of yours will be very influential and these machinations of yours will be very effective. However, none of your tactics will be able to influence them who will act in accordance with my laws. So here Quran has pointed to the solution, because all this is very well that Iblis and Shaitan are given time and stay with human beings, that is each one of them, and of course collectively as well when they behave together like Iblis and Shaitan. Over here the Quran has given us a choice, now provided a choice, that if you are not happy in the state of being Iblis and Shaitan, then here is what you should do. In contrast to your tricks, the system of Rububiyat of Allah will suffice to accomplish all their affairs. They will place their trust in it, will never deceive them. So Quran has come for our rescue and of course fulfill the purpose of human creation. There is no point in creating a condition, psychological condition which is weak, and then not providing us choice and means to make it strong. Because that is making our psyche strong, making it a muttaqi and a moment psyche will fulfill the purpose of creation of man. Fulfilling the purpose of the creation of man. Having described the circumstances of the creation of Adam and his connection with the universal forces during this finite stay on the planet, and then highlighting the potential pitfalls he has to face from his own unbridled emotions, intellect, and desires. That is Iblis and Shaitan. In this verse, Adam is informed not to think that this is the only choice he will have, not at all. Another choice will be made available. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى فَمَن تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. We have shared the verses from 30 to I think 34, and now I have quoted here verse 38 where Quran says part of the process of creation of Adam is that if as is sure there comes to you guidance from me, that is Allah, whosoever follows my guidance, on them shall be no fear nor shall they grieve. So Adam is told that you don't have to go into despair, you don't have to follow Iblis, but in case you get fed up with the Iblisiyat, then here is the recipe to come out of it. Since this verse came after the description of Malaika, Iblis, and Shaitan, hence Adam was expected to know all the details, and for that he was given the potential to characterize the things of the universe. That is, Allama Adam al Asma Kullaha. Note the term, the word over here is Kullaha. For everything in this universe, which is in this world, earth, which is handed over to man, that is Adam, and he has access to everything. All he has to do is to use his intellect and make effort to discover and find it out. It is now up to man to what extent he wishes to explore the world around him during his finite stay, and that includes the problems created by man-made system. So in order to become conscious, we have to make conscious effort and use conscious energy to become fully conscious. And this is only possible through making an effort. And with the Quran in our mind, with its value system in our mind, and with have full iman in Allah and in the values of the Quran, we can do it. In order to avail this guidance, Adam will have to create the need and desire for it and to reject the Iblisi trickeries after recognizing these. Further reflections on this verse 1765. The extent to which he can explore the world has two spheres, without the guidance of Wahi and with the guidance of Wahi. The former will not involve the development of his self, and hence he will live life assuming it ends with physical death. And this is an important point. We should not start giving grace and start giving attributes of the Quran to others. We have to be very firm and very convinced in our own heart, and be able to see the state of human self, how it develops, and what kind of a thinking it acquires in the light of Wahi. So those people who are not exposed to the light of Wahi and have no interest in the Quran, we need to look at them that their self is of no use to the system of deen. Of course, they can be good followers if the system of deen is established, because most human beings just wish to conform with the majority. And they will definitely conform to that majority where they see their own physical benefits. So this aspect we should keep in mind all the time. This means that all those aspects of his physical world related to the system of Rububiyat will never appear before him, as he does not possess that self which can carry out these tasks under the guidance of Wahi. He will also end up creating all those imbalances to which the Quran draws our attention from beginning to the end. This will also mean that he will not be aware of this choice of his and will end his life without knowing the benefits associated with this choice. And that is through Wahi. In the second sphere, he will have access to the permanent values through which he will choose to develop his self, which will lead to acquiring the requisite knowledge to function as the companion of Allah. This will not only help him obtain all the prosperities associated with the physical domain of life, together with this, he will know how to set up the system of deen. This sphere will include the concept of Allah and also details related to the life of the hereafter. This system will be based on this fact that human life does not end with physical death, but continues for further evolutionary stages. Continuing with some more comments. Continuing from the previous verse here, the Quran restricted the sphere of influence of Shaitan by stating, Inna ibadi laisa laka alayhim sultan. As far as my men are concerned, no authority shall you have over them. Through this, our attention is drawn towards the higher eminent aim of life, i.e., telling us that if you do not wish to follow the pattern of life of those who choose to follow Iblis and Shaitan, then here is another choice for you. Because life is all about coming to crossroads and then making choices. And over here, the Quran has added to our choice by saying that you do not have to live life under the spell of Iblis and Shaitan, and you can go out of this and create your own world. If you make this choice to follow the guidance of the book, then you will become excluded from the domain of operation of Shaitan, because the first stage is conceptual one. If we do not understand in the first place about our own thought process, because the outer world only changes when our psyche changes, and enter that domain of khalq for which the universe has been created. However, you will have to live in the same physical world and interact with these people and strive on the path defined by the Quran. And hence, these people around us who are not interested in the Quran, they are still our requirement to develop ourselves, because they are the ones who present challenges to us. On this path, you will not be alone, as our laws, that is in our presence of 24/7, will help you to get through all the challenges of your life. Then the Quran did not stop there and went even one step further and declared, وَقَفَى بِرَبِّكَ وَكِيلًا, that Allah's system of Rububiyat, His being Rabb, His attribute of Rabb is not going to leave you alone, because we are also manifesting those signs of Rububiyat through our own effort in the outer world, because we have changed our psyche to that of Rububiyat. Having moved out of the sphere of influence of your own unbridled desires, you have entered the domain of Rububiyat. In this domain, whoever places his trust in Allah, that is His laws, as Rabb, he has discovered that support which is وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدِ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا. Iman in Allah leading to grasping the most trustworthy handhold, which then never breaks. This is an evidence-based path called Sirat-e-Mustaqim. And it looks as if it is not possible, because the physical world around us is in the hands of Pharaoh. But that does not mean that Allah has handed it to Pharaoh, because if we know his laws and the laws applicable through Iman and through the permanent values, then we will acquire that conviction, which may be invisible at the initial stages, but it becomes concrete. It starts manifesting its physical aspects later on this path. Now, finally, on this verse, let us look at the weaknesses again and see what can we do using the light of Wahi. We went through some of these weaknesses as noted in the Quran, and I thought, let us look at these again, once again towards the end. For man was created weak, so Quran says, acquire strength through the Quran. And see how much strength the Quran provides us once we acquire precisely that Iman which is given in the Quran, and then have full conviction in the permanent values. And then by staying together and uniting our hearts, we provide strength to each other. Then the world around us, which is created by Iblis and Shaitan, doesn't scare us, doesn't give us fear. Becomes an open, clear disputer. Over here, Quran says, resolve all differences through the book. And we know about that the Quran throughout tells us that we can remove those differences, that divisiveness with which we are born initially as individuals. We have to overcome those proclivities. Man is a creature of haste, so we should look at every crossroad of life, that what action we are taking and what will be the short-term and long-term benefits in that. Man-made system will say, go for short-term benefits. Allah's system will say, do not go for short-term benefits. Look at the long-term effects of it on yourself, and also look at what will happen to yourself in the life of the hereafter, because the same self is going beyond death. For man is given to hasty deeds, overcome the urge for quick results. More or less similar, but slightly there is a shade of difference over here. For man is ever miserly, and we know that Quran has said that Waatal Mala ala hubbehi, that despite having that affection for money, possessions, and material things, Try to overcome that and look at it objectively in the light of the Quran through your Iman and the permanent values, and keep in mind that you are acquiring that self which can make this life happier for everyone. It is not about accumulating your own pleasures of life for yourself, and look at life in a narrow way. Overcome greed and learn to share. Acquire a moment psyche, that is, counter those tendencies of kufr. And this moment self, nobody is born with. We have to acquire it. And then the Quran signposts it for us. And that is important for us, because we cannot become moment unless we make an effort individually, and then of course come together. There are certain things which are individual, and then collectively coming together and moving forward turns it into a jamaat. Truly, man was created very impatient. Deen as a system needs patience, because you have to go through the process very pedantically, day after day. A lot of distractions. Don't get distracted, and don't go for short-term results. And that kind of a feeling that we are doing nothing, that should be curbed, that should be overcome using the Quranic guidance. But man is in most things contentious, and we can see plenty of it. People argue, some people even promote divisiveness. They say differences is a blessing. No, divisiveness is not a blessing. Divisiveness creates hell in the world. Because all of us are equal human beings. We got same needs. Why should we be divisive? And use the book for resolving issues of life. He was indeed unjust and foolish. We see zulm, injustice, tyranny, coercion everywhere. Be just and acquire knowledge and vision. And this is only possible through the knowledge of Wahi, and of course the knowledge of the man-made system. But man does transgress all bounds. Stop transgressing. Learn about the law of requital at every crossroad of life. In everything we do, we should see that I hope I'm not transgressing any of the values of the Quran. And that tendency to transgress has to be overcome. Otherwise, our self will not develop. We will fail to acquire that self which is required for the system of deen. And we should always keep it in mind that this life will end with death. It's a finite state. And if we haven't progressed in steps, we haven't progressed forward, then we are actually failing to come to terms with the guidance of the Quran. Truly, man is to his Rabb ungrateful. Come to grips with the system of Rububiyat, because if we do not work for that, then essentially we are promoting injustice in the world, because all the abilities and all the potentials we have, we are not making use of that. While we are struggling within the man-made system to earn a living, that is fine. Allah knows about it. But at the same time, we have no reason not to, for example, not attending this platform, because this is the only platform which is solely for the system of deen. And despite having time, we do not come to it, which means we are not serious about the Quran and our life. And create a self with new life, thus prove to yourself that Rabbana ma khalaqta haza batila, O our Rabb, you have not created this whole system of the universe as batil. Batil means for evil results, for wrong results, for destructive results. No, he has created it for positive results, but we have to prove it to us. Particularly with all that is going on in the man-made system, we have to prove it to us, prove to each one of us that what Allah has created is haq. And Quran has shifa as well as rahmah. That is, it has the treatment for all the diseases, whether psychological or physical. And then once we have identified those diseases and then treated them, then the nourishment and development starts. And of course, the first stage is to become a doctor in order to treat patients. So this is the process of becoming Momin, which is the doctor of the Quran. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of deen.